Hey, Captain Logos here, preacher at large, teaching the word and inspiring, 5 minutes at a time. Yeah, so I was reading in Psalms 55 today, and it just sort of spoke to me. And seeing what's going on in the world today, there's an equivalence here. Now, in Psalms 55, David is crying and pouring out to God because of treachery of his friends. So David not only had issues with the enemy, but there were times when his own friends turned against him and committed treachery against him. And in this particular psalm that David wrote is about that treachery in how David was handling it and his crying out to God. Right? So let's take a quick look at verses 1 through 8. I'm not going to read the whole thing, or 1 through 7, excuse me. And I think we'll find some parallels here. That's what's happening today. I mean, as we are seeing attacks not from outside, but from within our own people here in the U.S. Right? The U.S. is under attack right now, and it's under attack from within. We're seeing all sorts of riots and looting, and there's places where it's been going on for 50, 60 days straight, destroying things, just utter destruction. Right? So here it is, verse 1. Give ear to my prayer, O God, and do not hide yourself from my supplication. David here is crying out to God for God to hear him. And if we're not crying out to God for our nation, then maybe we should be. Maybe we should start. We need to cry out to God. Verse 2, attend to me, hear me. I am restless in my complaint and moan noisily. Here David's reiterating the fact that he's trying to get God's attention, and he's doing it in such a way that he's moaning and he continues to complain. He's restlessly. It means he keeps doing it over and over. So I'm wondering if maybe you and I should just wrestle in prayer a little bit more with God, right, for our nation, for our fellow people. Verse 3, because of the voice of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked, for they bring down trouble upon me, and in wrath they hate me. Now David's got God's attention, and he's laying out the case against him. And he's saying, here's what's going on. Now, can you imagine? Now, I can't imagine right now. I live in a pretty safe place, but if you were in one of these big cities where all this rioting is happening every night, I can't imagine living in some of these big cities right now, right? But if you're dealing with this stuff every night and you live in these areas, man, I could see you'd be crying out to God every night, worried about what's going on because there's all this evil happening, all this destruction, all this mayhem going on, right? And it's not just. It's not an enemy. It's your neighbors. It's people you know. It's people in your community. Right? And every night, people spewing evil at other people because of their color or because of what they believe about God or whatever's going on. Verse 4. My heart is severely pained within me, and the terrors of death have fallen upon me. David's fearful for his life right now in this situation, and I know there's a lot of people that are fearful for their lives in some of these places. Here we're seeing, police being shot and killed, people being beat up for just dumb reasons, being beat up for being white, being beat up for being black, being beat up for loving God, being beat up for supporting the current president, just stupid stuff. It pains my heart too. And I hope your heart aches for what's going on in this world and that you'll cry out to God for this world. Verse 5, fearless and trembling came upon me, and horror has overwhelmed me. Verse 6, and I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove, that I would fly away and be at rest. In verse 7, indeed, I would wander far off and remain in the wilderness. I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and the tempest. David's just wanting to get away from it all. And I'm sure if you're in the midst of this stuff, you just want to get away from it all too. As a matter of fact, I wanted to get away from it all. That's why I live where I do, not near any city center, not where any big population is, because I know this kind of stuff eventually is going to happen. And I didn't want to be near it. So I just preemptively fled from it. Right? People just want to get away from this. Right? The rioting and looting and destruction that's going on every night. But here's the good news. And it's in verse 22. Now, Psalm 55, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on there. And down at the bottom in verse 22, Cast your burdens on the Lord, and he shall sustain you. He shall never permit the righteous to be moved. What God is saying here is that there's a protection for God's people when we cast our cares on God. So, man, if you're in these situations, you need to call out to God. God will sustain you. He will protect you. His word promises it. Cast your burdens on the Lord, and he will sustain you. And we surely need some sustaining right now. We need to be praying for this country. We need to be praying for this world. We need to be praying for the looters and the rioters that they come to know Jesus. We need to pray for them. And we need to call out to God for this nation before we lose it, to people who hate it. We need to wrestle with God, cry out, and pray that people turn to a relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, go get your face in the Bible.